This is Me, I Am Mental, the podcast. A quick disclaimer. The content you find here is neither intended to be therapy or diagnosis. It is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Me, I'm Mental, the podcast, where we discuss all things mental health. Our endeavor is to bring you factual, credible, useful, and engaging information on mental health. Today, we have the ambassador of love himself, one Gilad, Millo. Before we get to discuss more with him about mental health and creativity, one Darren Collins, my co-host, has a little to say. Darren?
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, and welcome also to Me, I'm Mental, the podcast. Just to let you know, this is a free podcast, so anybody can watch, but we are sort of paid in currency of just likes and shares and letting people know about the space that we're in with Me, I'm Mental, just talking about mental health and adding additional voices to the to the conversation. So if you'd like to find out more about what we do or how to appropriately share and learn more, also you can go to meiammental.me, and that's where you can find our socials. It's like our grand central station for all the stuff that we have, whether it's links to LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, etc., but also articles, news articles, and helpful links for those of you who may be seeking help in the mental health space or just want to continue the conversation. It's meiammental.me, and that's why we're here, is to just be additional voices in this space. Again, my name is Darren Collins, and our guest today is Gilad Millo. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Gilad, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
We have, I'm really excited to have you on set. For our viewers and our listeners, Gilad has one of the most checkered careers.
Checkered?
Yes. He has been here.
That actually doesn't, that's like good and
shady.
Shady.
Checkered has an equal amount of negative as positive.
As positive.
That's the
Okay.
checkers, yeah. But that's nice. So
Checkered.
So he's confirming. That's good. All right.
Okay, let's put it this way: colorful.
Yeah.
Is that any?
Well, that
better?
also
is better.
it's better, but it's also
But
still
it's
implies
also
like
like-
he might have been to jail a time or two. But you know.
I haven't, by the way. I never
So,
never done any time.
So not
never
that color.
convicted.
Okay, never convicted. Yes, never
You
caught.
just got away. Never caught.
Never caught. Never good
Anyway,
lawyer.
but I think we will allow Gilad to tell us a bit about himself. That's usually what we do here.
Okay.
We just allow you to start from the beginning.
Prenatal.
Prenatal is
I
preferable.
don't remember much from back then.
Yes, you don't. But my understanding is that at least Gilad came to Kenya as a diplomat. Am I wrong?
No, originally that's true. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And then post that, he's been there, here, there, done this, that, bought a t-shirt even, and now sells garlic.
What?
That too. Even that.
Even that.
Really?
So Gilad, yes, tell us a bit about
You have a kibanda like out at
where
No,
just
no. I have a farm.
okay.
We grow,
I didn't know if you were actually just like
No, we grow garlic.
20
But,
bob
yeah.
each.
and then
But you have to hear my whole story to understand that.
where the garlic
Where the garlic comes in.
comes
Okay.
It's not just to keep away vampires. It's other things.
In addition to keeping away vampires,
Right.
also. Okay.
Yeah.
So where were you born?
I was born in Israel.
Yes.
I'm an Israeli. I'm a Kenyan. I'm 51 years old. I'm a father of two, married 26 years, but together 30 years. A father of two wonderful human beings. Omer is 23 and Leah is 20. I'm a diplomat's kid, so I grew up around the world, jumping from country to country. So while born in Israel, I at 2 weeks old moved to Germany, then London, then New York, Turkey. That kind of sums up my childhood, jumping from international school to international school and country to country. All the way back to 18 when I found myself back in Israel and joined the army, which is mandatory in Israel. So I did a 3-year service. I know it looks like I'm like a Rambo type and all that, but I was actually a weatherman in the army, so they have those too. Nothing as sexy as a paratrooper or anything like that. And I've been a amateur musician most of my life, singing in boys' choir as a kid in a Jewish boys' choir, and later in a high school band. So after army, I started dabbling in music and ended up with like a 3-year stint in rock music.
Where?
In Jerusalem.
Nice.
Jerusalem rock is like really well known in Israel.
Yeah.
So I was the lead singer of a Jerusalem rock band called the White Donkey.
Nice.
And funnily enough, back then, when we came up with that name, I didn't know black from white physically. White donkey comes from the Bible. The Messiah will come in ridden on a white donkey in Jerusalem.
Oh, okay.
So that comes from that. I only found out I was white when I came to Kenya.
Okay.
You know? From that,
They'll let you know.
That's a separate issue. Yeah.
Yes.
So did some music, and then I forgot to say, met my much better half. We in the army. We served on the same base in the army, and I'm really fast forwarding here through my life, but musician, and then journalist for a couple of years on TV and news in Israel, and then diplomat, like my dad, got accepted to the Foreign Service. My first posting was Nairobi as a deputy ambassador of Israel here.
What year was that?
2003.
Nice.
But we had come here backpacking in 96.
Mm-hmm.
Second year of university, we had a summer off, and my wife wasn't then my wife, she was my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually came here, traveled backpacking through Kenya and Tanzania, and then when we came back to Israel, I proposed. Kind of inspired maybe by the romance of Kenya, partially, but successful trip.
Yeah.
And came back to Israel, and we got married the year later. So, and then, like I said, musician at the same time. And when my son was born, my wife said, the music's not really paying, and hinted politely that I should
get stable.
A stable. I think musician is a job for sure, but it wasn't stable. Yeah. So I speak English well, having grown up in international schools, compared to your average Israeli with a heavy accent. So I got a job at Channel 2 News. Back then there was no internet, so you download materials from satellites and things like that, and did 2 or 3 years there. Got accepted, like I said, to the foreign ministry and became a diplomat. Came back to Kenya in 2003. Now with the family, we landed here with just after my dad had passed away, who was like a major figure in my life. And in Judaism, in our religion, when you mourn, you grow a beard. Yeah. So I literally shaved my beard off, and the next day got on a plane to start my new life in Kenya, which, sidebar, we could talk about that separately, but it was a bit of a lifesaver kind of thing, because instead of focusing on mourning and the loss of my dad, new life, new country, new energies, kids are 1 month old and 3-4 years old. And so it's all new and fresh and young, and kind of really helped me to get past that. And, Kenya, we were here for 3 years, loved it. Really loved it.
So you must have been very close to your dad.
Very, very, very.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very. And did 3 years here, got an opportunity to move to LA, and kind of couldn't say no.
And LA is not Langata.
So not Langata, no. It's Los Angeles. Los Angeles.
The other LA.
The other LA.
Yes.
And so I moved to Los Angeles and did a 3-year, as Israeli consul for PR and public affairs in Hollywood, and in Jewish Hollywood.
Wow.
Which for an Israeli consul is really like, you get exposed to Hollywood and agents and money and life. And after coming from Kenya, it was like as opposite as can possibly be from our life here, which I liked more, obviously, because I came back. Yeah.
Okay.
So after 3 years in LA, I escaped literally back to
from
Kenya.
LA.
Escaped La La Land, and LA was so intense and up there, and the job was so 24/7 and so intense. And then I got an offer to come back to very random, I'm a very spiritual person, so I don't think of anything as coincidence. Yeah. So, but in LA, I met my neighbor from Nairobi, who was the managing director of Amiran, which is the biggest agriculture company in Kenya. And actually met him in Las Vegas, not in LA.
Mm-hmm.
He came to Vegas, vacation clients or something. And I was there with my mom, who was in LA on holiday with my younger brother. I took them to Vegas.
Yeah.
And at dinner, I met my former neighbor, he's this giant in Kenyan agriculture. He created the Kenyan flower sector pretty much, which is a massive, massive industry here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the leaders in the world. And we get into this conversation, and I saw his company from the perspective of a donor who had served in Kenya, an embassy, who saw food security and saw that kind of thing. But at the time, Amiran was not dealing at all with anything like that. It was only large-scale farming.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of criticized or kind of put it out there that there's a massive potential here for business from the small-scale farmers. And he challenged me to write him a concept note, which I did. And then, unbeknownst to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I flew to London and did an interview for a job with the group that owns Amiran, and I got the job. Called my wife from London and said, we're leaving the government, which, as my father's son, he was like one of the dinosaurs of the foreign ministry. He was huge, 37-year career.
Wow.
And I was, Yehuda Millo's son. And here I'm leaving. I was the most unlikely to leave of my course. Yeah. They're all ambassadors now. So I left and took the job, and we came back to Kenya. And out of, people thought I was nuts in the foreign ministry. You're leaving government after LA and all this Hollywood and limelight to go back to Kenya to work for an agriculture company. I felt it was a calling. I thought it was something.
So there was no second guessing. It was just like
I've never second guessed once. I've never looked back ever.
Mm-hmm.
There's no back. There's only forward motion. So
what was your wife's take on all this?
Our biggest debate in LA, when even before I went to London to interview, because you have to say to yourself, if they say yes, will I take the job? You're not just going to go there and
Right.
And her mom had cancer in Israel. So we were supposed to go back. I had already been appointed in the PS's office as one of the two heads of staff, and I had gotten my position. I was heading back to Jerusalem, and her mom was sick, so she was going back home. And, I said, of course, when you're so many years together, you really talk about everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very kind of open discussion, and we both she wanted Kenya as much as I did, because we loved it here. And for the kids and all of it. But her mom was like the only real question. And I said, obviously we're moving from government to private sector, and that will allow us the financial, upgrade to now factor in the flight. So you just go to Israel as much as you want, be with your mom, which is what happened for the 2 years that we first came here until her mom passed away. She was literally regular flights, like that.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a problem at all. She was supportive of the move.
Yeah, she wanted it just like I did.
Brilliant.
From all perspectives, from coming back to Kenya, financially, for so many different reasons. But most of all, both of us loved it here, and both of us felt like we hadn't, it wasn't long enough. We had been here for 2.5 years. As diplomats, you get a certain point of view, and here we were coming back to be those people that the diplomats befriend when they arrive coming through a country for a couple of years. Their friends are the people who today, when new diplomats come in, they kind of give me a call, and I'm the Israeli who's been here for 20 years now. You've kind of shifted to the other side, if you will.
Are you able to articulate what was it about Kenya that is so attractive?
For sure, for me, the first answer my default answer is the people. It has been my answer forever.
Okay.
Because, that's after a lot of thinking, At the beginning, maybe 20 years ago, I would have told you the nature and the beaches and the safari and all of that. And maybe the nice house I was living. I don't live in a nice house anymore. We've moved to an apartment. The kids have gone, So it's no longer that And the sights and the fancy places and the beautiful beaches, there's other countries that have, Thailand has got beautiful beaches too, but I'm not, we didn't find ourselves there, even though we had both been to Thailand many times. But something about here, I'll give you my cliched answer or my funny answer, which is Kenya in Hebrew, in my language, which is language of the Bible, yeah? Kenya means, and I'm not like that kind of missionary person at all, but I do think there's symbolism in it. And Kenya in Hebrew means nest of God. Okay. I once said that in a speech right before the Minister of Agriculture of Kenya. She loved it. She picked it up and she kept using it in her speech, But I mean, there is something about here, at least for me, that is I'm home here.
So that's the word I got. When I went to an event with Nani Crows to U.S. Embassy. We met the ambassador, and I said he'd been here for a while. I don't remember which one it was, but I said, what's your take on why you like it here so much? And he goes, okay, the story I keep hearing from other people is one I share, and it is there's a unarticulatable, if that's a word, feeling of home that no one can really tangibly like we're from here.
That's definitely one thing, that feeling of home. But at the beginning, it was a bit there when I was comfortable here. Now it's completely like I'm immersed. So I'll go to New York, or I'll go to Europe, or I'll go home to Israel because it's also home, yeah. Yes. And I'll go to Israel and 10 days max. 10 days. After that, either people start getting on my nerves, or but I need to come back. And here's the reason. Pole pole is a way of life. It's a mentality. Okay? Let me say, if we, jumping a bit forward in at least my own philosophy of being here, in the West, in America, in Israel, in Europe, among the top killers, I think the number one killer of people is heart-related diseases from stress. And stress is a man-made, mind-made disease, which is you kind of do it to yourself, yeah? And in Kenya, to my knowledge, it's not in the top 10. People might be dying of other stuff that we should have cures for, and that's a different discussion. But stress isn't killing people in Kenya, forgive me, wider Africa, yeah? And that's because of a certain state of mind that people have here, which is, when you first arrive here, Kenyans will look at you and you'll see, we've all seen that foreigner who kind of loses it in line at the supermarket or the bank, and the Kenyans will look from the side and go, this is crazy Mzungu, and it is to a certain degree, okay? Have you seen the movie Avatar?
Yeah.
In Avatar, there's that part where she says, we'll teach you our ways and let us see if your insanity can be cured. Yeah. And sometimes I think that Kenyans look at us and go, if you spend long enough here, maybe your insanity will be cured. And I mean that Western thing that makes you cause yourself to have stress and to really stress seriously over things like time. Yeah. Time and to lose it in traffic. Not something you see here. People here drive extremely aggressively, yes, but that comes from a different standpoint. It comes from kind of a survivalism mentality of every inch. Yeah,
it's a have to. I just got to do this.
It comes from a different place. I'll fight for my inch in traffic, but I won't get furiously mad to the point of rage and losing it just because I'm stuck in traffic, yeah? I mean, I lived in the States, and somebody might bump into you, if Americans are watching, no harm intended, it's just my observations of the world, yeah? But if you walk in through a supermarket in LA or in New York or whatever, and somebody bumps into you with their shopping cart, they'll chase you all the way to the cash register just to apologize because you saw them, but in the car, where they're anonymous, yeah, they'll chase you all the way and curse you generations back and maybe even go road rage violent on you, okay?
Yeah.
We don't see road rage here. We don't have road rage here.
Yeah, it's not a thing. After I was here the longest, I went back to USA for a spell, and I had a bumper sticker that I bought here that said "No hurry in Africa," and I put it on my car. And then there was a sudden lane closure, and we all had to merge. I didn't see it as soon as everybody else, so I merged in Kenyan style. I was almost drawn and quartered. Like, guys freaked out, and I was like, I'm not.
It's like
not personal.
in the States, the reason America works the way it does is because everybody observes the rules. I remember after 3 years in the States, we went to Griffith Observatory in LA with my wife and another couple of friends, and the two ladies, there was a line, and they just stood in the back of the line. And I said to them, now you've officially become Americans. You went and stood in line without checking what it's for, only to find out that it's not the line that you needed. Yeah? So you conformed.
Immediately.
Immediately. Kenyans will stand in line too, and they'll do it very patiently. How do you recognize an Israeli in a place where there's a line like Disneyland? It's the guy going...
Is this the right spot?
We're impatient. I felt that in Israel now when I was there. You see people like here's another observation for you. In Kenya, we don't hoot. We don't honk. In traffic, when you're stuck in the car, we don't do that. In India, it's very common. It's part of driving. Mm-hmm. In the States, when you honk, it's because you're upset with someone and it comes with anger.
Yeah.
In Israel, it's like, bam, and people get angry as they do it. And they're personally taking the guy in front of them and they're angry at them. We don't have that here. We don't get personal here in traffic. It's not like I'm going to chase you and remember you forever. It doesn't happen.
I've definitely been on Matatu and seen a white guy freak out, just losing his car. And I'm like,
it's funny, but at the end of the day, here, and this is what happened to me. I've been here 20 years, and the journey that I've been here brought me to the point where you come here at the beginning thinking you'll fix things, you'll make it better. Mm-hmm. And if you last long enough, you'll understand that it's not about that. You're not here to make it better. Maybe you could shut up and learn, and then you end up learning like crazy. When you open up here and you realize, and the thing is, when I talk like this to Kenyans, they'll be like, no, man, what are you talking about? Because grass is always greener on the other side. And it takes a stranger, an outsider, to see, we have a saying that says the stranger for a minute sees everything that's wrong or right. Yeah. So when you have that outsider's perspective, and then you look, but not from a place of criticism and how to make it better, but rather, what can I take away from here? You discover that there's a whole life that you've kind of been living maybe wrong, or you can do it better. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of fast forward all the way to come back to Amiran and back to my life story. Which was Amiran. I got the offer, I picked up the job, came back here, worked here in agriculture for 8 years, being part of a very incredible small scale farmers revolution that we led as private sector, and really kind of changed the face of small scale farming in Kenya. It was the most incredible passion, the most amazing journey, getting youth involved, and it was just incrable.
Quick question. Did you have any background,
agricultural background? But even in the time of, no, so the answer is no, okay? Only from visiting, but I had never been a hands-on, I've never had my hands in the soil really, I don't think I ever really did that except like maybe in the beach in the sand. But I've never like farmed and one of the things I tell people, I get very philosophical when people visit the farm, and part of it is if you're feeling unstable, or you're feeling like life's becoming a bit too much around you, put your hands in the soil and breathe, and that is a very stabilizing connection with the ground, the earth, and it works. This works, yeah. It's just very stabilizing and calming, and kind of chucks all the other stuff out for a minute. But yes, I did that. I worked in agribusiness for 8 years, and sometime around 2010, getting back to Kenya, 2009, found myself in a bar asking a band, can I get up and sing with you? and I hadn't sung for 20 years.
Okay.
Quit music completely. I mean, sung in the shower, sang with the kids in the car, but didn't perform.
Right.
Got up and sang Hotel California, and then they said, "Do you know another one?" And Master Blaster, and then No Woman No Cry, and then came back the next week, and the next week, and the next week, and before you know it, I've created like this kind of set of songs that I can do live with the band.
Yeah.
And then somebody from the Israeli embassy heard that the former deputy ambassador has a band, which I didn't. And they said, the ambassador called me and said, "Do you want to perform it at Independence Day?" I said, "Sure." Called the band. And none of this is for money. Even that one, I got the band their money, but I didn't take. I had a job.
Yeah.
So for me, that was just like fun. And while we're rehearsing for this, for the Independence Day, we created a set for me that would now take me forward with this band for a few years. So a whole like 1.5 hour set of me singing cover songs. And it evolved into the band would sometimes split into 3 for shows, and I would take a show, never getting paid, but I would handle until somebody else was freed up and would come from the other show. And for me, it was just great fun. I get to sing. And at some point, I started playing around with Ali Kiba Cinderella, which is a very well-known Ali Kiba from Tanzania, bongo music, very well-known, probably one of the most famous musicians in East Africa. And I went to Turtle Bay Hotel in Watamu, sat on the second floor balcony, and you can't see from down in the garden. And I'm sitting on the balcony with a guitar, and I'm rockifying or playing this bongo music, but and by this time my Swahili wasn't so good, so I was more mouthing the words, only later to find out what they meant and learn and etc. But at the time, just Googled and mouthed the words and learned the words, and some I understood, some not. But I was singing my heart out. And at some point after I'm done, I get up, and down on the garden are 3 gardeners dressed in the hotel overalls. And this guy looks up and he goes, "Oh, you're Mzungu." This guy's a Mzungu. That's the first time I ever heard that. Yeah. And I get back to Nairobi and I go to the bar and I tell the band, "Hey, do you guys know Ali Kiba Cinderella?" And they say, "Yes, I can sing it. Let's hear it live." And we jam.
Nice.
And I sang it and the crowd goes nuts. And everybody's like, "Mzungu." And I was, I'm a very good imitator. So I was doing the accent pretty well.
Oh, nice.
Been here for quite a few years and I know it, and picked up some word in Swahili. And so I figure, let's learn more songs. I did Kidum's Haturudi Nyuma and just learn more and more songs. And it becomes a thing and the crowd begins to grow from week to week. And I'm unofficial. I'm an amateur jumping in with the band. They don't know when I'm going to show up or not. When I come in, they start, they see me walking in and they start playing and I get on stage and jam. It was very random, very unplanned. And it developed to the point where I sat down and wrote my own Swahili love song. And then Wendy Kimani had joined the band. Wendy was the runner-up for Tusker Project Fame, which is like Kenyan Idols. Sure. And incredible voice. And she had joined the band like a year before. So, and just around the same time, a friend had brought this producer, MG, into one of the shows. So we exchanged phone numbers randomly, you think, uncoincidentally. And then my wife went home for summer with the kids, and I find myself alone, and I was like, call this producer. I said, "Listen, I have a song. Can I play it for you?" Came to his studio with a guitar, sat down, and he looks at me, he says, "That's a hit song." And I said, that's like the most cliched thing. No way, man. You pull this leg, it plays Jingle Bells. No way. Yeah. And he's like, "No, that's a hit song." And we recorded. And then I took it to Wendy back on the weekend when we were with the band. And I said, "Listen, I recorded this song and I need someone to sing backup vocals. Backup vocals. That's what I asked for." We ask and God laughs. Yeah, we plan and life has its own plan. Wendy misunderstood and heard a feature. And she came back the next week with these incredible lyrics. And I was like, okay, I don't really know. First time for me in studio recording, Right. So I called the producer. He said, "Nah, just bring her." And I never sang again. He opened up the song, recorded Wendy. She did everything, all her magic. And, then we had a song. I started playing it for everybody. I had no plan. I'm a corporate executive, 44 years old, suit and tie.
Yeah.
And so I had no plan. There was no plan. I did this for fun. I have a song. I started playing it for everybody. And one of the people I played it for was Giuliani.
Mm-hmm.
Giuliani's a well-known Kenyan rapper.
Yes.
He's also known as the conscience of the street. Back in the time of the elections, he wrote Utawala, which was...
It's quite the street poet.
People don't criticize.
You invited him to the EduTalk, right?
Yeah, he was at EduTalk. Yeah. So he's like a brother. And Giuliani was my choice for our brand ambassador, for our poverty eradication ambassador when we were doing the agribusiness for the youth.
Okay.
That's how we knew each other. I heard him speak. I was mesmerized.
Yeah.
Walked up to him and said, dude, I'm head of PR for Amiran. I got a vision. Come to my office in here. And he came, talked to Zero for a couple of hours. And the next thing you know, we had created the Farming is Cool concert tour and him as brand ambassador and the whole, sold it to my boss and it was a done deal. And that's how we became friends. And then as we're driving around the country, it was around 2014, as we're driving around the country doing this Farming is Cool across the country, I was writing my song and I kept singing him a cappella, verse by verse. Every time we drive around now, I had this driver who was with me from the day I joined Amiran. Okay. So he's like family, and he knew. I kept asking him Swahili words and all that. So finally we're singing it to Giuliani. He's all proud of me, that we're doing this. And Giuliani said, listen, it's a good song, man. You need to record. That's why I recorded. Because he had told me. And when I recorded it, I sent it to him, sent it to Jeff Koinange, who I knew from a couple of interviews, Caroline Mutoko, who I knew from interviews, just PR work. And so these are all, well-known celebrities, and I sent them the song. Carol Radul, who is the leading sports broadcaster in Kenya, one of them. She had followed us on Twitter, supporting the whole Farming is Cool thing, and she's a farmer and she loves the whole concept. And so I had her access to another famous person. And I DM'd her on Twitter, said, I'm not just the Farming is Cool guy, I also have a song. I recorded a song. I'm a singer. Nice. And I sent it to her and she texted me back, you should email it to this guy called James Joroge at Radio Africa. He judges the music. He's the music director. I'm a good soldier. I email him the song, and she gets back to me on DM like the next day saying, listen to XFM. XFM doesn't exist anymore. Back in the day, XFM was like a major station. Yeah. Listen to XFM between 1 to 2 p.m., 4 to 5 p.m., 9 to 10 p.m., and your song's going to play. Sat in the office alone, 9 p.m. at Amiran. I'm sitting there. I got my laptop, my computer playing, streaming XFM, and the song comes on, and I'm like, the song's on the radio. The song's on the radio. That's like a thing, And then it picks up and it picks up and it begins to play regularly. It gets into the high rotation, and suddenly it's on the charts. And I get a tweet that the tweet was on a Saturday because that's when they had the charts, and the tweet was that the fastest rising song in the charts this week, up 12 places. So apparently I was on the charts last week. I didn't know about it.
Okay.
Up 12 places is Unajua, Gilad and Wendy Kimani, and it becomes a ritual. Every Saturday, I listen for the charts at 10 o'clock, and the song comes on, and I wait, and I'm tweeting along with the fans, and I'm responding to them, and I'd never done this stuff, yeah, as an advisor to an ambassador, but not,
Sure.
And it becomes a thing, and then the next thing you know, it gets to first place on the charts, stays there for 7 weeks, and then it goes down one spot, and then up again for another 3 weeks, and the whole time, I'm getting phone calls from people. I'm at Nakumat, your song's playing, because everybody at Nakumat was playing Kiss FM, right? And it was everywhere. It was just everywhere. For 3 months, the whole country thought it was Kidum. Nobody knew who I was.
Yeah.
And nobody could see me. There was no music video, and we have the similar raspy voices. Yeah. He's now a good friend, but he's like a very famous musician, and we have a similar raspy voice, and a lot of people thought it was him. Then we made a music video, and we took we took it to the extreme. I'm walking a bicycle, a black mamba bike, which is like black mamba, Kenyans, you know. And I'm walking this black mamba bike through Roysambu neighborhood, literally in the ghetto. I'm eating ugali. I'm fist bumping the guy who's fixing the bike. I'm coming to get my bike fixed, and the whole time I'm singing. And Wendy, by this time, has married Mzungu and lives in Holland. And she's left Kenya.
Yeah? Oh, she's not.
And I just came back from being a keynote speaker at an agricultural event in the States, passed through Amsterdam, met them, and I told Wendy, "What are we going to do, man? Are you coming to Kenya? Can we make a music video?" And she says, "No, I'm not coming anytime in the near future." So she refers me to Mushking, who is the director who's since made like half my music videos, and he solves it by saying, let Wendy get a crew and film in Holland, and we'll film here. So we actually never met for the making of the video, and you can see it when you see the video. She's moved on with her rich boyfriend, and I'm in the ghetto. and that's the story of the song. And she's my ex, you know, and that's the song. And when the video came out, it just went nuts. I'm in PR for 20 years. I've never had a client or a topic that was so hot as myself at that time. And everybody wanted interviews, and I just said yes to everybody, and I was all over the place. And the next thing you know, I'm famous. It was kind of like that. And then I had to prove to myself that I wasn't a one-hit wonder, that it wasn't that. And then I wrote Sema Milele, which is Say Forever, which is it turned into like the wedding song of Kenya. It was played on the wedding show. And there was like a 2-year period where all I did was every Saturday surprise a bride and groom at their weddings.
I remember that.
It was hashtag the wedding crasher.
Yeah,
and it became the wedding song, and I would just crash weddings and surprise, and people would surprise their friends, and I would show up at weddings singing this song, and some famous people who now it's so cool. It turned out good, but Sema Milele became just as big as Unajua today. They're like, millions of views, both of them. And it just kept going, and song after song after song.
So at some point, you quit Amiran?
Amiran retrenched. It wasn't so much me. It worked out in my favor.
Okay.
I mean, Gilad Live, the billboards were up all over town. That was like my maiden concert at the race course, and I hosted. For me, it was like the most humbling. The biggest giants of Kenyan music, I featured them in the concert. So Eric Wainaina and Sauti Soul and Giuliani and Wendy, who came from Amsterdam, and Della and Heart the Band, and and Super Band, which I put together, which has been with me since, my band. Uh-huh. It's a band of very talented musicians, but these musicians only come together as Super Band. They don't ever play together anywhere else.
Okay, cool.
And it was kids that I auditioned all over the country and found today. Every one of members of that super band is a big shot in the music industry playing somewhere. But I found them all as unknown kids. One of the sax player, he'll be happy if I tell this story. He's an AFRIMA award winner now. Yeah, AFRIMA is like the Grammys of Africa. Yeah, and he won with Hornsphere. But when I met him, he was on the side of a stage, like this 24-year-old kid who had not played with anybody. So the whole time that the band played together, we did a concert we did Westgate Live, which featured Nyashinsky and Nameless. So the band got to rehearse with everybody. And then, for Gilad Live, we rehearsed with everybody. So it's like we all got crazy exposure. When I was told that I was leaving Amiran, I walked out of that meeting, and the billboard was up for Gilad Live. And it was like very clear to me what my future was going to be. So I threw myself into music for about 2 years and created Harmony, which was a company created to handle me. My music. If you look at the original videos, like Nakuahidi begins Harmony Africa Presents. So I did that for a while. And then what happened was, at some point, you've realized that the expat job was paying a lot more than music. And music is wonderful and shiny, and everybody knows you and all that. But I got 2 kids in ISK, and ISK is a very, very, very expensive school. Well, I shouldn't say very, very, very. It's not good for them, but it's suffice to say, it's like
berries are okay.
It's like college in the States, yeah,
right,
for real. Yeah. And here I am trying to maintain a lifestyle after coming out of corporate with music, which was virtually impossible at the time. So I went from my default safety, which is PR. And Harmony quickly became a PR agency, and Westgate was my first client. And we did the concert, and then we did like a lot of other activities. And then I moved on to different clients, and the PR evolved, and that became like my bread and butter, while still for 4 years in a row, Gilad and the Super Band was the Christmas and New Year's show at White Sands in Mombasa, which is like one of the biggest hotels in Kenya, with 1,000 people in your New Year's Eve show. And it was like the who's who. I did NRG Wave with Sauti Sol and Ali Kiba with 10,000 people in the crowd. So I did like a whole bunch of shows, but at the same time, I was this behind the scenes PR guy, to live, right? To did that, but really, I had been a hired hand, a salaried employee, the son of a salaried career person all my life. I didn't know nothing from private sector, from being independent, from doing it yourself. And it's very different, getting a salary at the end of the month versus having to invent what brings the money, very, very different. And the beginning of that, the first 2-3 years of that was kind of rough going financially. And then just different things clicked. And I adopted a Kenyan model, which is to be a hustler. When I came to Kenya, in my understanding, you do one job. You have one career, and that's what you do. Yeah. So I was a diplomat. I was a journalist. I was one thing. Yeah. Today, there's a poster I've seen somewhere that with a quote from me saying we were not born to do one thing, find passion in all that you do. That's something I said somewhere, and somebody quoted it and put it on a poster.
Nice.
And I believe that today, and that was my change, to understand that you can do more than one thing. And so the PR was okay, and the music was okay. And then you fast forward to the Christmas of 2019, and we met at a Vipassana retreat. 10 days of meditation, no speaking, no phones, no nothing. And it's where I met my future partner. And do you know why he stood out to me? Why he stood out to me?
No, I don't.
We were in the Vipassana, there are the meditators and there are the people who are serving. So that's also kind of a calling. It's like helping people to meditate. So you create that atmosphere, and serving is a calling. And it was the servers who, we had a water bottle in the dorms. We were in Juja in Manu Girls' School, which the girls were off for Christmas. So they used the school as a retreat for the meditation retreat. And there's a water bottle, a big water bottle that we're all drinking from, and it was empty. And like 6 of us are standing around this water bottle. We can't speak. And we're not allowed to make eye contact with each other because you're supposed to be in your own place. So we're just standing there humbly and quietly, kind of waiting for somebody to do something about the water. And one of the meditators, who is today my partner in the garlic business, proactively picked up the empty bottle of water, walked to the kitchen, got the new bottle, and brought it back. Seemingly simple, but somebody took the initiative, and that initiative caught my eye. And on the last day when we spoke and we all introduced each other, he and I connected well. I even gave him a ride home. And then 2 weeks later, he gives me a call. He says, you mentioned on the last day that you had worked in agriculture. Let's have some coffee. And he says, I want to start a garlic farm. He comes from garlic, from that background. He knows it. And I said, let's do it together. And he said, okay. And next thing you know, we were partners. And when you meet in such a pure environment like meditation, that you kind of more trusting towards the person or the vibe. And we went around looking for land and just found land, created this thing, and 3 months later, COVID hit. And the music stopped. By then I was doing more than 2 shows a week. 0. Now everything's closed. So that source of income has dried up. And PR, everybody was holding their money back. All the clients were holding their money back to playing a kind of a wait and see game. And you weren't allowed to go from county to county, and our farm is in Kajiado. So we had to go and get we had to get the letter, right? That will allow us to get out. And when we got that, that was it. They had freed the shackles. And at 5:30 a.m. every single day for about a year, we got up and we drove out to Isina, to the farm, which is about an hour plus away, hour and 15. And we'd spend the whole day out in nature, farming and building this passion project. It was around the same time of a writing block that I had, that I couldn't write. Nothing came. A whole bunch of stuff that I just wasn't. My explanation today is that my passion went somewhere else. It went to the garlic, which I just was in love with. Today, if you Google, I'm like the most famous garlic farmer in Kenya. Right? It's become a thing. Yeah,
why not?
Cover stories and newspapers and TV stories and instead of being that celebrity, not that I'm criticizing, but instead of being that celebrity who flaunts a fancy car, fancy watch, or whatever that cliche, is, I went and put a spotlight on what is Kenya's favorite pastime, farming. Kenyans love farming. And they have a connection to the ground. It's a cultural connection. People get it. And the rest, as they say, is history. So now when people say, here's a very long introduction.
Yes.
When people say, what do you do?
That's Gilad for you. It's
there's no one thing. I'm doing all this stuff.
Well, it's the Kenyan answer. I do business.
I do business.
Yeah, but I mean, but business was not. Yeah, I mean, today business is definitely an important part. Also, because I recognize that if you want to do something, it's got to be sustainable or you don't get to do it. As much as you love the garlic farming, if you can't build a business model that works, then you're not going to get to do it because you got to go do other stuff that makes money because that's life.
What percentage of your time is spent with the garlic at this point?
A lot. I mean, I juggle well. I really juggle well. I can we'll laugh. Like I'll spend an hour and the hour will be over and you'll be like, do you realize how many topics you just addressed in 1 hour? You just talked music and agriculture and it's the truth. But I'll visit the farm at least 2 or 3 times a week. I spend a lot of time explaining to farmers on the phone and WhatsApp and stuff like that. But I love it. And, at the end of the day, you just sleep less.
And you're still doing the PR as well.
I have Millo Communications is a PR agency.
And are you singing? Are you on stage?
Less now since I decided to stop the clubs because I didn't enjoy it so much as the bigger shows. But also because, my attention was pulled elsewhere. But now I'm working on an album. Now the music block is, so now I'm working on songs. And so that'll eventually bring, of course, a return to the stage and the band. Now mostly I do big shows or corporate shows or specific shows that I'm called for. And then you kind of get the band together for that show, getting the band back together,
Nice.
You still do White Sands?
No, they haven't called for ages. Maybe if they're watching White Sands,
Okay. Which now we can sort of transition to mental health matters. And like we said, what we're trying to explore here is as a creative and in the creative space, there are positive mental health sort of aspects, but there are also challenges which people in that space encounter. And maybe it would be good to get to know a bit about how creativity works, how the creative mind works, some of the things that make creatives really come alive. But in that process, what are now when you're talking about the mental health, the block you had, what would you attribute to that? How do you dissolve the block, if it's possible, or does it just come about? How do you maintain things like just your sense of balance? Because that's very critical, I think, especially to creatives. Most of the time, to my mind, they tend to be very, very sensitive people. It's part of what helps with the creativity, but it also makes them, more susceptible maybe to, mental health challenges. So that's now where I'd like us to go, the space I'd like us to go into.
I'll tell you this. When you say creativity, obviously you mean the musician and the songwriting and that kind of thing. But for me, the PR agency is a whole creative world. And the garlic farming, which began as farming and has evolved into 160 farmers all over Kenya growing. So there's a creativity there to invent that model.
So yes, maybe beautiful.
So the creativity is in everything. It's a personality. It's not like I only get creative when I write music.
So maybe we expand the definition a bit. In fact, if I just carry on and just let us know.
Even if you go back to the days of, we talked earlier about the farming is cool and I'm Iran, right? So you would think that, trying to get the youth to experience a mindset change in how they view agribusiness. Because agriculture is viewed as a dirty thing. When you're in school and you misbehave in Kenya, punishment is weeding. Yeah, and it's a dirty business which our grandparents, our parents did. They didn't succeed because they don't have money, and I'm as a young person not attracted to it. Right. Yes. So to get them to look, that was a whole world of creativity of bringing in Giuliani and creating the concept of farming is cool and a concert tour around them, which actually is intended to make you look. So that I can show you the greenhouse and the drip irrigation, right? So it's always creativity in everything. It's like my wife will joke that somebody would call and say, "No, I've turned Gilad off for the night. We've switched him off." Literally. Otherwise, it doesn't stop. It's constant, and I think when you come to a friend Skoko Washira from Heart the Band. When I was not writing, I wasn't writing music. It was a whole, maybe a 2-year period now. It literally just ended a few months ago. And in that 2 years, I was over at Heart the Band's house and we're sitting down and I told him, nothing's coming. And of course it's frustrating. And of course, talking on the mental health side, of course it has a whole lot of other implications. You begin to question, am I ever going to be able to write again? Is it over? Was whatever was feeding me to write music, is it gone? Have I written my best songs? And what about the audience and the fans who every single Facebook comment about, why did you quit music? But I didn't quit. Rihanna waited 6 years before releasing an album. And not Rihanna, but for me, it's only been 2. So but every comment like that kind of gets you thinking, what if they're right? What if I've... And then now throw into that, I'm 51, I'm no kijana, let's be honest, yeah? So you start asking yourself that, and all of those work into your mind movies, yeah? What do you do when you have mind movies and you need to unblock? You go for Vipassana. A friend says, maybe you just need a break and go and meditate and shut up for 10 days and turn off your phone. So I did.
So I'm going to stop you then, and then we step back a bit. One of the things I wanted us to address is firstly, because you mentioned creativity as being more than we make it out to be, firstly. But secondly, how do you define creativity then? And who is a creative person? Maybe more to the point.
Wow, I know, it's a really hard definition.
Obviously,
we box it into art, right?
Generally
but the guys who just invented threads, right? The new Twitter, the Instagram, Twitter, Instagram. But the guys who just invented threads, or your iPhone, or your whatever, it's all around us. So much so that it's impossible to keep up anymore. I remember when the iPhone watch. I remember reading about it somewhere, and the next thing you know, the kids have it. The next thing you know, my wife wants one, and the next thing you know, it's a thing. And I didn't notice, but it was somebody's brainchild. So it's all around us. It's everywhere. I'm in PR, so I'm driving around seeing billboards, and I see them for what they are. Somebody's creativity, for better or worse. Yeah? Or you're hearing music, or, showing up to the radio every morning and doing a show like it's everywhere. It's constant. In the musical or that kind of box, when you're an unknown artist, then it's just you with yourself having fun making music and creating something. There's no pressure. There's no stress. There's just do it, for fun. That was the most fun. After you release a few songs and you're already established, I even made the mistake of writing a couple of songs with what will people say in mind.
Oh, I see.
And I don't I like them less.
Yeah,
You know, I'm
yeah.
less connected to those songs, and they did not as well. And that's also kind of what's expected of me. And there's no book that somebody gives you and says, okay, well, you just became a famous musician and here's the book to how to behave. There's none of that. And you make mistakes and you go here and there. And like I said, you know, block on the way and so on. But I think if I were to define creativity, I would say coming up with something, you know, something that's coming from inside you outwards to the world, as opposed to something you took from somewhere else or borrowed, but even if it was something you took and changed it, that's also creativity. Yeah.
So it's a lot broader than the definition. How we tend to focus a lot on the art and like in this case maybe music, but
it's more obvious.
It's like creativity is problem solving, and you can do it in almost any sort of. If you're looking at a problem and finding a solution that is unique, it doesn't matter what field you're in. That's creative thinking.
Creativity, yeah.
And so then adding a sense of maybe the problem is everything's been done, so there has to be a new solution. That might be in art, where it's like, well, let's do something entirely new as opposed to solve a problem. Maybe the problem is that it's all old, it's all been done, and someone needs a fresh idea, and that's the problem, is to come up with a fresh idea. But if you're in architecture, you know, I imagine creativity is just simply like, how do we solve this in a way that's...
So what I'm thinking is, I totally agree with you, but is there a certain way in which creativity, say, in the sciences differs from creativity in the arts, for the reason that maybe creativity in the sciences tends to follow, or there is an assumption, and I am also making that assumption, that it tends to follow along certain like lay down processes, and then you build on that. But in the arts, it's like this thing comes from somewhere, just hits you. It's like sometimes you can't really turn to what was the source of this, and how do I explain this? What does it mean exactly? As of it's easier maybe to articulate the...
I agree and I disagree.
Yes.
Because from a scientific perspective, take the evolution of laptops, okay? Something that it's an Israeli... I mean, I know it from the Israeli story because the dual core, the chip that allowed the evolution of speed in the laptops was created in Israel. So, you know, we know it as one of those... you know, the PR of Israel things. But the reality of it is that they had reached the maximum speed that they could with the IBM and all of those computers, right? And their thinking in how to speed up was the thinking of how to add more speed. And if you read the book Startup Nation, which talks about, you know, the Israeli startupism, it tells a story of the guys from Intel, the Israeli guys who flew to California and had to stalk the CEO of Intel in the restroom to get him to listen to him, to get him to accept. And this is after 4 or 5 times that he failed. He could not get them to think in the way that he saw it.
Okay.
And they were blocked in the maximum speed. You can't speed up more. His solution, the Intel guys in Israel, what they solved was they saw it like an old school manual gear shift, where you needed to shift down to the slowest gear in order to be able to shift up. So when they said to Intel, what we want to do is actually slow down the speeds in order to be able to speed up more, they changed the whole way of looking at it. And the guys from Intel the Americans, they didn't accept it because all they saw was the value of the stock that would crash. If Intel said that it was slowing down its speed because its claim to fame was the fast. Needless to say, obviously they listened and the rest is history, and the laptops were born as a result because you could now speed up the speeds and you could now take it with you. And of course, the speeds multiplied. So the fact that this guy saw everything in a different frame from what everybody else was seeing, that out-of-the-box view, a solution to a problem, sure.
Applies.
But it's creativity, and it's not just in a scientific way. It's first of all to accept, to change the prism that everybody's looking through, to shift your whole lens from a focus on one dot to seeing a whole different picture. And I think that's creativity.
It's a nice feeling.
I think that artists like it's like we're holding a like a name tag or a sign pointing and saying creativity is here. Whereas if you're in the sciences, if you're in biology, whatever, there's no one pointing saying, "Hey, this is creative." So that's
in agriculture. We use traditionally we have used fertilizers, etc. With the birth of organic, now all these bioproducts exist, and these bioproducts are actually you're putting bacteria in the soil and it's eating up the bad stuff or whatever. Yeah, and it's a very simplistic explanation, but to even think of that, to even see it like that, means you got to shift your entire way of thinking. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the 80s and we watched movies like Star Trek, and today Richard Branson's flying tourists up to space for real. It's happening. Leave alone how much it costs. Everything begins expensive. And then it's not. I mean, the first iPhone was expensive and then it wasn't, and on down. If they're flying to space now and the beginning price is so high, eventually, maybe not us, maybe our children, maybe our grandchildren are going to be going up for the, a bus ticket kind of thing. I got a bus pass, I'm going to space. It's going to be like that. It's going to be like that.
That'd be great.
It will be like that. It's so obvious it's going to be like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So now in terms of, we have had a brief look at the process of creating something. Just now, during that process, sometimes there are challenges. And some of those challenges, like you alluded to, would be being frustrated with not the block, not proceeding. You sort of wanted to go a certain way, maybe a writer, and you just...
Life has put a wall,
yes,
an invisible wall, and said you can't go. When I asked my friend from Heart the Band, what do you do?
Yes,
and he said you got to write with intention. That was his answer. You have to. When I told him I'm blocked, what do? He said you have to do it with intention, which means what I think he meant was don't sit down, try for 5 minutes, get frustrated, and get up, which is what was happening. Yeah, it's not going to come easy. He said you got to really focus and take your time and give it that attention, intention, and that'll solve. And I wasn't able to. I wasn't able to get past the first 5 minutes. Okay. And every time I'd be like, nah, this is trash. So I would write some lyrics, and then they're no good, and I chuck them. And that happened 50 times.
Were you ever able to get to that point where you could write with intention?
No. I collected. It's a very funny thing. Okay, you don't know what's really blocking you. Okay, it's something inside you. It's something that you've created that's blocking, because obviously it's there. Yeah, whatever you were tapping into before, but you've kind of created that. I think. Now, for me, I think it was because my passion. Because everything with me, I'm a very passion-driven person. Some people are driven mentally, very logical. I'm a heart. I'm all heart. Like I'm driven from there. So when I'm training the farmers, the garlic farmers. I'm very passionate about it, and it comes across.
Sure.
When I'm performing, when I'm singing, it comes across. We used to joke when I would explain to people, yeah. We all have these mind movies, right? And if I'm singing and looking into the crowd, and in my mind I'm thinking, did I just go flat? Are they happy? These guys are not listening. Maybe I'm not good tonight. Maybe I'm off. Maybe it's what I'm wearing. I've put on weight. All this stuff can go in your head as you're singing a song. Yeah, it really is true. Yeah, and if you're thinking like that, I'll be technically on point. I won't make one mistake, but the music won't reach you. Okay. Yes. Whereas if I'm in my zone and I'm just singing, and no mind movie, no nothing, I'm just having fun and singing. Yeah. I could make 3, 4, 10 mistakes in a song and you won't even notice because you're just having so much fun because it's reached you. Yeah. So it's also about that passion, and in the writing, passion is part of it. So I think my passion shifted to the farming, which is kind of what caused maybe the lack of writing or so on. But the funny thing is that about 3 or 4 months ago, when I did finally, suddenly I'm sitting down and a song came out, a whole song. And then I went to the studio and recorded it. And as he's still working on the song, I started writing another one. And before I got to studio with the second one, I wrote a third one. And the funny thing is that all these lyrics are coming from where? they're coming from all these half lyrics that I wrote back when I was blocked. And I said, this is not good.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I keep it in my phone.
Yeah.
So I write all these half lyrics, and I kept saying, they're no good, they're no good. And I was literally telling friends in the music industry, nothing I'm writing is good. Nothing good is coming out. And I cataloged it like that. I boxed it off as unworthy, not good lyrics.
Yes.
And then when suddenly it started free-flowing, and I've got like, you're writing and you're in your zone and I need lyrics. Wait, I've got a whole bunch of stuff on my phone. Boom, song, and they're all good. Suddenly they're all good. So it's about how I was seeing it, not about the thing itself.
Yeah, but there's also something about momentum that also sort of improves whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. When you do the first one, I'm back. Confidence.
And you can grab that other stuff and throw it in because.
And then so I to be honest, it's not that I'm copy pasting the lyrics that I wrote, but a lot of the stuff I wrote actually used in I've done 3 songs with mostly and some new stuff.
It's a weird headspace. There's a weird. I do stand up comedy, and so last Saturday I was at Wildly Coffee, and I was really bugged because I invited a lot of people who said yes. It's like, that's good. That's great.
Yeah.
But turns out the computer system for the ticket sales was down for most of the month. It was the worst sales of any show at that venue forever. And so as a performer, it's like fewer people, especially with stand-up. There's like a weird hole because it's harder to get them to roll together. Sure. And so I was just in my head, just this is going to be a crappy show. This is not going to be good. And it wasn't that good. Okay. And I never really I did the jokes. Everyone laughed. No one's walking away going, that was bad. But me,
you're in your head,
totally in my head, and all these empty spaces in the show, just empty spaces where I was like, I knew I had a good joke coming up, and I couldn't even bring myself to do it because I didn't have the momentum. But I did a show in Nakuru a few months ago, and there was so much momentum that I was grabbing small little things that I just were in my notebook that weren't so great and throwing them in and hitting, and we're just together, and it's just, but that being in the headspace.
It's a lot in your head. And sometimes you just need to shut your brain up, and the breathing works with that. For me,
what do you mean? What?
So we talked about how we met in Vipassana and the meditation, which is about breathing. A lot of it's about breathing at the beginning. And you're breathing here. You're supposed to be aware of the air coming in and out of your nostrils.
Okay.
So you're inhaling, exhaling here. That's the basic technique of the beginning of it, yeah? But once you've got yourself very focused on the air coming in and out, and in this space right here under your nostril, you discover that your mind can't work at the same time, okay?
Wait, what?
When you concentrate on your breathing, you can't have a mind movie. It doesn't happen simultaneously. I'll give you another one. I don't know if you've read, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle.
I've never read it.
Great book, incredible book, highly recommended, yeah? So he mentions in The Power of Now, so now means to be present. And when I'm present, when I'm here and now, I can't have mind movies because I'm here. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways to get here, because, example, you're in the shower, which is where we have our best mind movies. I can shave in the morning in the mirror and have an entire fight with my wife, and she hasn't even said a word yet.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or I can get mad at someone at work.
I take cold showers, so it's only blasphemy and swearing the whole time. There's no mind movies, but I know what you mean.
You can be in your head in another level, and the other person's not done anything. So many times, you can have a fight with someone, you can get mad at someone at work, and you haven't even gotten there, and that person has no clue that it's coming, right? When you see them, you're going to, and if you're aware enough, then you'll catch yourself doing it, and the one thing you won't do when you see that person is let it out. Mm-hmm. That's like the advanced class of this, yeah? Okay. But one of the ways he mentions in the book to stop the brain movies is to feel the water. When you're touch, senses. When you focus on the other senses, they shut off the brain movies. So if you're concentrated on feeling that the water's cold or warm, but you're there with the water, your mind will not work at the same time. It's incredible, but it's true. Yeah? Or if you're focused on your breathing, the mind movies will stop. Mm-hmm. And it's a wonderful way. So my technique when I get on stage is I'll do a couple of breathing exercises if I'm feeling tense. If not, I'll just go. But often when I'm about to perform, or not even perform, when I'm about to go into the place. Because today when you arrive at the space where you're going to perform, there's a whole thing around you, and there's cameras, and everybody wants you to, take the pictures. And so there's a journey before you can even get to the stage. And then you get up and sing, and the crowd, and of course the crowd, everything we said about not being in your mind. So I'll stop just before everything begins, and I'll focus. Or if I'm about to start a Zoom meeting, by the way, at work, I'll take 3 minutes and I'll breathe, and that brings me back to center. And then I come out of the breathing with my mind clear on what I need to do right now, what the next task is. And it's usually very crisp.
Yes, talking of performance, and you have talked about that as well. So there is the build-up to the performance itself, which involves training, rehearsals, and then perhaps the logistics of it. Sometimes even when you go on stage, you're aware about some things that are not exactly in play. So places where a few things that are not where they should be. And then as you go on stage, there's you having to maybe do your publicity thing with fans and what as you go on. And sometimes it doesn't go all too well. There could be a glitch here, something happens there, but you carry that on with you to the stage.
Anything that happens to you, how you receive it,
yes,
it depends on where you were to begin with.
Yes.
If I'm in a bad mood and you say something that I would usually not react to, of course, I'm already bad mood. Let's suppose I was a bit late because of traffic, right?
Right.
If I had left the house in a bad mood and then traffic came on top of that, that's when you lose it, right?
Heck yeah.
But if you're in a good space and traffic comes, then it's just traffic. It's nothing. It's just a hindrance to get to where you need it. And is being late a stressful thing that, oh my God, I'm going to embarrass myself and they're expecting it, or is it just,
is what it is.
Yeah.
Africa time, pole,
Yeah.
and it's how you take it.
Yes. So yeah, in fact, what do you, in terms of advice to artists, how do you manage yourself?
I've had entire shows messed up.
Yes.
I've lost entire shows where I suffered on stage the whole 3-hour show because I wasn't in the right headspace at the beginning. And then it piled up.
Yeah.
The mic didn't work. The sound, and usually what happens is you're attracting. You start attracting these things. And if it's extreme enough, I had one of these shows, if it's extreme enough, the hole in the roof in the club where you're playing will begin to rain on stage. And I looked at that, I was like, I did that. I made that happen. I caused that to happen, And if I get electrocuted now, I deserve it. because I made all this negativity that I brought on stage, I made this happen. Yeah. And you do. In life, you walk around, if you're like this ball of negativity, the negative stuff's going to happen to you. And if you're positive, then it's not going to be like that. I believe that. I think that's true. You attract the energy that you're also... I have a song, Ukipeana mapenzi utapokea mapenzi. When you give love, you get love. But love is energy. And if you give positive energy, you're going to get positive energy back from people in the world. And when you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a question about creativity. I'm just going to draw from my own experience. The points at where I get frustrated and the points where I get freaked out or get angry or whatever as a creative is like if there's a client or someone who someone who holds the purse strings who has hired you to be the creative. And they say stupid stuff, and they say we don't want it like that. We want it like this. And as the professional who's being contracted or whatever, and I know it's a weird decision and one that's going to cause me more problems and probably isn't going to make it better. How do you ride through those conversations?
I went through an entire phase at the beginning of the music. This time around, and when Unajua came out, I went through an entire phase of truly believing that the money would jinx the music. That money was a dirty thing, so to speak, and it would bring negativity to the music. And if I was doing it for money, then I'm not doing it from the right place, and it wouldn't work. And I believed that for a while, and then I didn't. And then I understood that was just like, one has nothing to do with the other. And you do what you have to do in this world. And if the music is a way to help get you money, then that's legit, and by the sweat of your brow, whatever that is. But there was a long time when I thought, and of course, what packages with that is when, somebody like I had the show and you're in your zone and you just sang your heart out and the crowd is there with you and somebody says, turn it down, it's too loud.
Right.
And you're like, what? And that happened on several shows. People don't have a license or whatever, it's too late, or reasons that have nothing actually to do with you and your music, but you're like, different things, technical things that can happen. And like you said, a client that really hired you to be a musician and perform, but at the end of the day, couldn't care less. They're for ticking a box. They needed a live band with a famous person, and they don't really know your music. They can care less. They're doing this for somebody else, yeah? And when you come like that, especially me when I manage myself, so it's not like I can pawn it off on other people. I'm the one who closes the deals.
Yeah.
I'm the one who handles the sound. I handle the band. So I'm the one who stands on stage, and instead of singing, my mind is like, and it shouldn't be like that. I switched that, and at some point I brought in somebody else. But in reality, you're you came to sing, to share your. At some point, I had to stop being a little bit over naive about that too, and just understand that I have a job to do, and my job is to sing these 3 songs at this gala dinner in between this and that. Otherwise, me and 10 other people don't get paid, and that became a thing too. It's not me alone anymore.
Right.
The band, and there's the sound guys, and there's a package here, and there's a lot of people who are going home with food on the table as a result of this thing. And for a long time, it was like, I'm not turning down this client because I want everybody to, it became that too.
Yeah.
So now that you're speaking about food on the table, there's also the challenge for many artists or creatives about stability.
Yeah.
Or trying to actually translate your creative efforts into income generation, whether it can be sustainable for the long haul, whether you can actually, like you said earlier, decide, hey, I'm going to raise a family on this.
It's the biggest cliche in the world.
Yes.
It is the biggest cliche. Art doesn't pay.
Yes.
That is the cliche. And when I was young and I had the first band in Jerusalem, nobody knew what would happen later in Kenya and that this would become a thing. At the time, we were not people knew us. Yeah, we were a thing. After 3 years, people know you. But it didn't, there was no financial, we weren't signed on a label, and we didn't, it was all indie stuff and all by ourselves. And my dad was at the time Israeli ambassador in Rome. And we were married. My wife was pregnant. And I was 27, and my dad calls my wife and says, what's up with Gilad? He's lost it. Or what's going to happen? And my wife, who knew how to handle my dad well, said, don't worry about it. He's just doing at 27 what he didn't do at 17. And, he needs to go through this, and it did happen later for me.
Yeah.
But it was like that. And my dad, who was more old school, a job is a job. And writing songs and earrings and musician, and that's not a job. A job, to his defense, when I got accepted to the foreign ministry, he said diplomat wasn't a job either. He said a job is making things and having a real career, and be a doctor, be a lawyer. But when we were growing up, even today, it's very hard for parents to say to an artistic kid, people have talents. Yeah, they can play guitar. They can draw pictures. Will they be able to turn that into a career? Those of us who are older and more experienced in life know that it's extremely difficult. How many Kenyan musicians are making a living from music? Top 20 maybe. And even that living, top 10 are doing it well. It's not that many.
Yeah.
And there's thousands. Yeah.
There's thousands.
So I tell a lot of people, whenever you do an interview, whenever you speak to a youth group or something like that, people will say, what's your parting shot, or what's your advice to, the younger up and coming musicians? And my advice is practice art for the sake of art and enjoy what you're doing and get the most out of it from that place of passion and creativity. And if it should happen to become a professional thing and you can make a living from it, that's all well and good. But don't come out of the gate aiming for that, because it'll never happen. Because first the art, I will argue that the reason I succeeded was that Unajua, the first song, was written from a place of love for the fun of writing a song with zero intention of anything. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it so happened was kind of like we kind of rolled with the punches and it worked out that way. But it was never, no way was it the plan. Mm-hmm. So because the song was authentic, it worked. And so if you're going to be an artist, be an artist. If it happens to, and also acknowledge the fact, a lot of people get frustrated from this too. You're an artist, you've made the art. That doesn't mean that you know how to do social media or book shows or the logistics or make sure that the guy pays you at the end of the night or any of the above. Your talent is being the creative.
Yeah.
So if you're lucky like me and you also have a PR mind, then you can do that. And if you're not, then get someone good who does.
I tell them, get as good as you can at something and then get twice as good at figuring out ways to get people to pay you to do it. So it's like practice the art, but learn twice as much business in that process. And that's a way to do it.
We're four brothers. Two of my brothers, one of them, who's both are very successful, one of them has an approach of outsourcing. Mm-hmm. So if he needs for his business, if he needs to make a website or an app or whatever it is, that he'll get the best person, whether it's a lawyer, an accountant, or whatever it is. You're not going to study law because you need a lawyer. You're not going to study accounting because you need an accountant. You'll hire the best person. But people usually stop at those two functions, and they don't realize that there are other functions in your professional life and I have another brother who learns how to do everything alone. So while this one moved a lot faster, this one, as an individual, knows how to make websites, Excel, import, you name it. Like he's learned everything. But of course, he's moved slower because it takes more time to learn than just outsourcing. Yeah.
Do you think there's any more gratification or satisfaction from either one of them because one is self-made and one is sort of just collecting a tribe?
Everybody pushes or drives themselves towards what at the end of the day is what they want. Mm-hmm. This one gets the gratification from successful business. He doesn't have time to learn everything alone. So he'll hire the people because his bigger picture, his goal is a successful business, and indeed he's a very wealthy, successful businessman, self-made.
Yeah.
He's one of the biggest tour agents in Israel. The other one who learned everything alone, his gratification is from this guy knows a lot about everything. I'm the PR agency, and he came here for a visit, and he's like, you really should Google words and keywords and he knows everything, right? And it's not his business. He just learned along the way everything he needed to know and became very good at it. And I'm sure for him, that's the source of satisfaction because I'm not sure his goal was to be all that, but rather to know he can't accept not knowing.
Right.
It's just like a thing. He's got to crack this by himself. And today, you should see the website he made for himself. It's incredible. But he learned how to make websites,
I'm always in that space too. Where I'm always like, I should watch a tutorial. And I'm like, wait, maybe I should just hire someone and not watch a tutorial.
And in today's world, you literally can just watch a tutorial, right? Yeah. So my son is a phenomenal guitar player. He is an AFRIMA award winner with me. He was featured on my song when I won AFRIMA. And then later he got accepted to Berklee College of Music, which is like the best music school in the world. And he studied alone. He learned from YouTube. He found his favorite YouTube teachers. My brother started him off. Another one, but how I did, you talk about supportive parents, yeah? When we were in LA, he was 6 years old. And he calls me into the living room, and he had the Guitar Hero. And Guitar Hero, right? You're pushing the buttons and the colors to music. And he says, "Dad, check this out." And he turns his back to the TV at 6 years old, plays "Sweet Child of Mine" by Guns N' Roses, and doesn't miss a note. Never looked back at the TV. And I looked at my wife, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting this kid a guitar.
Yeah.
Went to Guitar Center, bought him a starter Fender and a starter amp, and my brother and another friend and here and there, and he starts picking it up. But my thing was never to push him to practice, never to make it a thing that you must do.
Yeah.
I had gone through that. If
Yeah.
Mom is watching, love you to death, but you shouldn't have forced me to go and practice my piano, because that's why I quit.
I had the same thing. I had the piano. I still have nightmares about quitting piano.
Mom would make me go upstairs to the neighbors because they had a piano. They also had a cat, and I was allergic. And I would come back after every rehearsal, scratching my eyes. And she would time. You can't come down after after an hour. You can't not. And she would listen. You rehearsing. Mm-hmm. And I did the violin, and it was the same story. I had to be in the room and practice for an hour. And if I didn't, then
Was there a cat there too?
No, but I just didn't enjoy it. And eventually, when I got to guitar, she didn't push, and I stuck with it.
Nice.
And then my philosophy was, you'll pick up the guitar when you want. I'll never ask you.
Yeah.
This kid's got 6 guitars that he's built by himself, half of them. He's phenomenal on another level, but you can only get to be that good when it's from a place of love, when it's from a place of passion, not because somebody told you to do it. Mm-hmm.
I watched yesterday on Deutsche Welle, it is just coincidental. There was a 30-minute item on kids, raising kids, gifted kids, and they were focusing on mostly autistic kids. Mm-hmm. There's a violinist, a couple of violinists, a couple of pianists, some who have already made it into adulthood, stars, and massive stars, and some who are very young now, and they're looking at what it means parenting these children and the different styles. And most parents are really driven. In fact, most parents really just cut out everything else out of this child's life, and it's
often to the point of almost obsession with the success of the child, to the point where the child, it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
And the basic to all of this, it's fun.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be fun.
Love it.
It has to
I remember
be fun.
There was this particular one, I can't remember her name, she's Chinese, and they're talking about a time when she had a 6-year mental breakdown. It took her 6 years to get back to her music, but I think she had been pushed so hard.
You're pushed to competition and to excellence, to the point where if you fail, you don't know how to handle it. And when you're a kid, you're not supposed to. It's not supposed to be like that.
Yeah,
Piano.
it's a very interesting. Yeah.